Pronouns, we use them in place of a noun. For example, Tashi kicked a wall. The wall hurt Tashi's leg. Tashi rubbed her leg. What I want you to do is get a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper, write down the noun that is repeated again and again in these 3 sentences. Pause the video. Okay, so you should write down Tashi, wall, maybe leg. So it's too repetitive, it's not good enough. So we can replace those nouns with pronouns. Tashi kicked a wall, it hurt her leg, she rubbed it. So what pronouns do, they help us avoid repeating the same noun. They help keep writing varied and flowing. So we have different pronouns: it, her, she, it. What I want you to do is I want you to write down as many pronouns as you can remember. He, I, and so on. Pause the video now. So relative pronouns, they are a little bit different and they're used differently. What they do, they introduce the relative clause. Now we're going to come back to relative clause in a minute, but it's very important that you remember relative pronouns introduce it. Once you have the relative pronoun, you will see a relative clause next to it. So what they do, they relate the clause to the noun or the pronoun. So very, very important that you recognize the relative pronouns. Who, which, where, when, whose, that. Please remember them. So let's have a look at the example. Tashi, who was in a bad mood, kicked the wall. Tashi is my noun, my proper noun. Who was in a bad mood is my relative clause. And at the start of it, I can see my relative pronoun, who. So what's happening here? The relative clause adds extra information about the noun. We could see that the relative pronoun used here is who, because we're adding more information about a person. Tashi. When you want to add more information about a place, you will use the word where. If you want to add more information about an object, you can say which or that. If you want to add more information about a time, you might want to use the pronoun when. And whose. We're going to come back to that. Tashi kicked the wall, which was dented already. We could see that the relative clause added more information about the wall. If you look carefully at the 2 sentences, you will see in the first one, the relative clause is in the middle of the sentence, and on the second sentence, it is at the end. If you add a relative clause in the middle, you must have commas, comma, comma, comma before, comma after. If it's at the end, no problem at all, just stick it to the end of the sentence. Tashi, whose feet were tough, kicked the wall. Now I told you we're going to come back to the whose. I wonder if you already realized how it's been used. Whose refers to something that belongs to that person. Tashi, whose feet were tough, kicked the wall. Mr. Mathiva, whose eyes are round, walked across the street. Yeah, you're talking about something that belongs to someone else. Tashi kicked the wall that blocked her escape. We could see we have relative pronoun at the start, that, and straight after we have the relative clause, blocked her escape. Remember, relative clause adds more information, and it's not the main part, because I can take it out and the sentence still makes sense. Have a go at covering the screen in a way that hides the relative clause. So what could my first sentence be? Tashi kicked the wall. Makes perfect sense. Do it again with the second one. With your fingers, cover the relative clause in the pronoun. Tashi kicked the wall. Again, makes sense. Let's cover the third one. Tashi kicked the wall. And the last one, Tashi kicked the wall. So what we're doing, we're adding more information.